well worthwhile. My name's Alan Randell. I'm with CFA Society Seattle. I am a current trustee on the board and chair of the technology department. Today we'll be discussing cybersecurity and risk management at the society level. Before I dig into this presentation, I thought it might be helpful if I gave you some of the backstory that led up to today. One of the interesting communities as a technology chair is it gives one a front view seat to the explosion in data technology that we're all witness to, and seeing firsthand how that impacts our lives. To put the change into scale, I want you to keep in mind this one statistic, that every 48 hours today, more data is being generated than it's been created in the first 2,000 years of human civilization. But along with the growth in technology, I also saw a lot of risks developing, specifically in the lagging of security protocols and also user awareness in terms of how do we protect ourselves in the new digital era. So I'd like to start off this presentation with a bit of a quick quiz. This won't be graded, but I am interested to see what your responses are. I want you to take a look at the list of items and institutions that I've listed on the screen in front of me. Take a moment to assess which of those has not been or cannot be hacked. Oh, you guys are no fun. Okay, so you know the trick behind this. Okay, someone fell for the easy answer, which is refrigerator. And that is actually incorrect. And I would say of all those answers, that is the least incorrect, because a refrigerator falls into the category of a connected smart device, what's known as a smart appliance. Unless it's an old refrigerator. But for those of you who've been keeping abreast of the cybersecurity news, you'll understand that connected devices like smart fridges were actually responsible for the latest attack on LinkedIn and Twitter through what's known as a distributed denial of service attack. So you spoiled the fun of this question, but that's not the point. The point is for this presentation that all those institutions, all those devices could be hacked and have been hacked and will continue to be breached. And the fact that hackers can break into the IRS, Department of Defense, and virtually any financial institution to which they put their minds to, should be a bit disturbing to all of us. And in many ways, we are losing the battle against the cyber criminals. And in some regards, we are losing very badly. So 2 years ago, I decided to do something about this. And with the help of my local society, CFA Society Seattle, I began a project that began as a matter of personal curiosity, but grew into a way to teach basic cybersecurity best practices to non-technicians, the average person, such as a charter holder who has perhaps limited technical expertise. And the result is the presentation that you'll see today. So what we'll cover today are two angles of cybersecurity as it pertains to risk management. The first part will be Darren's introduction to an overall effective risk management model. And in the second part will be my part of the presentation, which will focus mainly on defining the risks in cybersecurity, which I think is the most critical part of any cybersecurity apparatus, and it applies to each and every one of us. Simply put, in order to control your risks, you have to first know the risks. And the way I'll go about presenting this will be very different, I hope, than how most of you have been forced to learn about cybersecurity. I am very well aware also that most compliance quizzes and curricula surrounding cybersecurity are mind-numbingly boring. And they're boring because, for the most part, because they don't show you how the other side thinks. And what I'm going to show you are the tools and tricks from a first-hand perspective, everything I learned when I was training with cybersecurity professionals about how the other side thinks. This presentation goes over highlights. It's by no means exhaustive, and that's not our purpose. My goal here is that if we do our jobs correctly, is that we arm you with a basic toolkit to instill a basic cybersecurity risk management system. And for some of you, I hope this sparks some curiosity in the subject. And to some degree, I hope this scares you just a little bit. But most of all, though, I hope this presentation does give you a small dose of optimism. That this thing called cybersecurity is not nearly as hard as it may seem. That a small amount of effort on your part can actually do a lot to protect yourselves. And with that, I'll hand the table to Darren.
Thanks, Alan. So my name is Darren Goodweiler. I'm the Chief Compliance Risk and Ethics Officer for CFA Institute. I started with the Institute about 1.5 years ago. And a little bit about my background and what the card I handed out to you, so you can kind of see how this goes together. And thank you, Ken, for inviting me to co-do this with Alan. I'm looking forward to this exercise. So I started out a long time ago. My first career, I was a Marine for 6 years. I was a bomb technician in the Marine Corps. From there, I was recruited into the Secret Service. I started out protecting President Bush Sr., then I had President Clinton for 8 years, and I finished up with Bush Jr. And then I went over to Homeland Security. For 4 years, I was the chairman of I chaired the Physical Security Committee for the Homeland Security when it first stood up. And then from Homeland Security, I went to work for Briggs & Stratton, which is an engine company, a publicly traded engine manufacturer. I was their head of safety, security, and risk management.
AIMR. And you get to see firsthand what the website used to look like. And if at any given time they posted a vulnerability to that version of the website, you'll see it right in front of you. There are several billion websites sitting in the Wayback Machine's archives, and that number grows exponentially every year. Every one of you who has a website also is revealing in some way information to the general public, and attackers especially know where to look. Every website URL is registered through a central database known as ICANN, and ICANN keeps track of who owns what. In particular, whenever you register for a domain name, you have to give certain registrant details. Think of it as like an address for a PO box, information such as your name and phone number. Here we select as our unwilling target the CFA Institute, and you can see that, well, ICANN has thrown for the whole world to see quite juicy details about the CFA Institute that might be useful to an attacker. Okay. Key things to focus on are possible outdated emails. So if you look very carefully at this portion under registrant email, the domain is registered under a name krp@aimr.org, which tells you that it's probably been a long time since someone updated the registrant information. You also know addresses, postal codes, administrator phone numbers. Some emails, which go by a pattern of first and last name, can also surrender names of key personnel for a target. And in many instances, such as what you see at the top, ICANN will also tell you the name of the technology and the service that you're using to host your website. Important details in launching any cyber attack. Another footprinting tool that attackers will use, and that's very important for you to understand what the risks are, is to spool through the XIF data. XIF data is what's known as a form of metadata. It's data that is under the hood. It's not readily visible to the naked eye. What this example will show you is that data is not just limited to text. It can also be found in images. For the target image, I am actually using a photo from my own collection. It's a picture outside of my local library. If, and for some reason, it's not coming up.
You got hacked.
Oh, it's not me, it's whoever the poor owner of this computer is. Here we go. So this will take just a minute. But to give you some background about what XIF data is, it's data that's embedded into every single image you take with a smartphone or a smartphone-enabled camera. And for some reason, this still does not want to work. Oh, look at that.
turns away. It's got good security awareness, and then the next person just turns their computer on, and everything's right there, right? So why hunt lions when there's sheep to be had? So that's the whole idea between deterrence and letting that awareness. So you really got to put your deterrence in place, and that's really to make it as unattractive as you possibly can for the bad guy. Next slide.
So as it pertains specifically to cybersecurity, I believe that deterrence is one of the best policies. It is much easier to prevent a cyber attack, to make one's digital assets unattractive to the attacker. Much easier to do that than to clean up the mess afterwards. And in terms of installing deterrence, you really have to understand the attacker, okay, to see what tools and techniques they would use, and often starting from small pieces of data to leverage up to larger attacks. On top of that, using security software and authentication for its original intended purpose, not using 123 as a password, not using your pet's name, or not writing off password reminders to change your security every 30 days. And the third and most important rule is to use common sense. I can't tell you how many attackers I talk to and cybersecurity professionals I talk to who say that the easiest way to determine who to attack is to look at social media. Social media is 100% free, it is 100% legal, and it's widely available and free to the attacker. Almost every cyber attack I've studied starts with social media, which is interesting because it's almost like we're shooting ourselves in the foot. We're making it easy for the attackers to determine our interests, who our friends are, where we live, and our addresses, which makes their jobs that much easier.
So the fifth D is detect and assess the attack. So the idea is, once I put my program together, I want to, as quickly as possible, detect and assess that there's an attack. So the idea, an example is, I'm sleeping in my house at night and I hear banging on the front door of my house, and I get up and I look out my window. So that's detection, it woke me up. The assessment is I look out my window and I see somebody there with a crowbar trying to break into my house. Or I see my 18-year-old son who lost his keys and he's trying to get in the house, right? So I got detection with assessment. One's a risk, one's a problem, one's not, right? So I got detection with assessment. They're both potential risks, Jim, I appreciate it. Yeah. So the idea is kind of when they talk, the canary in the coal mine, I don't know if you, the situation back in the coal mines in the 1800s in the United States, they used to use canaries to go in these coal mines for detection and assessment. Because the canaries, they're physiologically very similar to a human being, except they have much lower tolerances for methane and bad gases that build up. So they would carry these canaries in the coal mine that you used to see, and they'd hear them singing, and as soon as they stopped singing, they knew that the air was so bad that they had to leave. It still was low enough thresholds that they could get out safely, but it was enough that it would kill the canary. That's the whole idea of detection with assessment. Next slide.
So when it comes to detection in cybersecurity, I wish it was as simple as putting a bird in a cage and waiting until it drops dead. But the honest truth and the hard truth is, it's not. Even for large institutions such as the Department of Defense, backdoors have been found that have been in place for months, if not years. And if institutions as large and as sophisticated and well-funded as DoD can be breached and go undetected for that long time, then chances are pretty good at least one person in this room has the same going on for him or her. Detection methods, I think, are really kind of a poor secondary defense. The best medicine is prevention. But if you do have to rely on detection methods, key things to look out for are if your computer starts acting up. Your intuition is often a very good line of first defense. I always like to tell individuals that the best cybersecurity software is the one between your ears. You know when something's up. If your computer is slow to start, if it starts installing random applications, if it starts asking you weird questions, or if your screen starts glitching. If you're more sophisticated, you can download software that can detect these breaches, or if you're particularly astute, you can use Wireshark yourself or another packet sniffing software to detect if odd-looking traffic is coming in and out of your machine.
So then the 6D, we're just about there. is dispatch responders equal or greater to your adversary? So the idea is once you've detected and assessed that attack, once you look out the door and you see the bad guy at your door, you call 911, right? So you've identified that you got a problem, you dispatch somebody to come. The idea is you have to identify those resources before you have it. So you have to understand that you have a police force in your neighborhood. You have to understand the tools and equipment that you have from a cyber perspective. You have to make sure that it's capable, it's equal or greater to your adversary, so it'll take it out. Otherwise, it's not really a responder, is it? It's just kind of a bump in the road. You still have to have somebody respond. Next slide.
The best cybersecurity responder I found is always individuals. For as sophisticated as software has become, for as far advanced as artificial intelligence and distributed computing have become, it will never beat your intuition. In many cases, it is not whether or not a person can detect and respond to an incident, it's whether that person decides to take action. Often the biggest inhibitor to response is not the technology, and it's not detection. It's whether or not the user decides to make the hard decision to reinstall an operating system or to completely wipe a hard drive. Response is difficult, and it's at that stage that probably every other apparatus in your cybersecurity mechanism has failed.
So the 7th D is delay the attack until the responders can arrive and stop the threat. So there's two types of delays here. You have the one delay is how long it takes the responders to get there. The second delay is how long it takes the bad guy to do their activity. So I go back to the analogy or the example of somebody breaking into my house. Once I see somebody breaking into my house and I call 911, and I know that it takes 5 minutes for the police to get there, my door better work and hold that out there, the person out there for 5 minutes and 2 seconds, right? So you have to ensure that whatever system you put in place can hold off the bad guys long enough until the good guys get there. And there's a whole bunch of different ways you can do to either make one bigger, make one smaller, but the idea is you have to make sure, in the nuclear security world, they call it adversary task time, and there's a whole methodology behind it. But at the end of the day, it's keep the bad guys out until the good guys can get there. And then the 8th D is defeat your adversary. So the idea is rely on your resources. One of the things that I found as I've taught people security and risk management over the last 20 some years is we come up with this acronym called CHAOS, which stands for Chief Has Arrived on Scene. And the idea is most of the time the people that learn how to do it and that put the systems and programs in place are the working people and the guys who do it every day. And what happens is when you have an incident occur, especially a high profile incident, in comes the chief and it's going to save the day and he has no idea necessarily how to do it or what's going on. So the idea is, and I tell people this all the time, rely on your resources, rely on the people that you've trained every day, rely on the people that are the experts at what they're doing, trust your resources. Win the battle and the war. Don't get so focused in on what's happening here. Take a step back, take a deep breath, and ask a lot of good questions. Returning to normalcy. What is the new normal? I can tell you, when you look at Target and you look at Home Depot and all the other folks that have had these security breaches over the last couple of years, they have a new normal that's completely different than what their old normal used to look like. And then lessons learned. The idea is once you get to the end of this exercise and you get to the end of an event or a situation, or if you go through a tabletop or whatever exercises you do, look at what you've learned. You're usually at the end of an event, and I've lived through, unfortunately, hundreds of crisis events, whether it was a plane crashing into the White House or whatever. At the end of that event, you're truly exhausted. But that's when you have the most information in your brain to turn around and say something differently. Should we have done something differently? What were the lessons learned? And put that back on top and run yourself back through the methodology to make sure that you account for it the next time so you're better prepared each time. So it's a constantly evolving process. So here's the 8 Ds. And all I would ask is if I share these with you, if you use these 8 Ds, if you go through them, send me an email. My email's on the front of the card, just to let me know, because I have all of these stories I've been keeping track of over the last many, many years as I taught this. And I got all kinds of really cool stories about different people who have put these in application, whether it was just a daughter that was dating a guy, and all kinds of really cool stories about this. Not just national security stuff, but really usable information. So there's the 8 Ds. I hope you enjoy them and bring us home.
So by now, I think you're all pretty familiar with my take on how human error and operator error affects cybersecurity. The bottom line is that every cybersecurity attack begins and ends with people. Encryption technology, algorithms, RSA tokens, those technologies, for the most part, do not break. And hackers are aware of this, and much can be said about Darren's approach to security overall. That says that attackers target those who are the soft targets. And a large portion of the attacks are due to us voluntarily surrendering information to the attackers. A good example in this very room is anyone connected to this Wi-Fi router. If any of you are not using what's known as a virtual private network, congratulations, you are a case study in exactly what we've been talking about. Any and all traffic that you send over this wireless connection is viewable and probably has been viewed by someone with a packet sniffer. So while this presentation doesn't seem like it bodes well for our species' overall intelligence, I do want you to take away this one fact, that if it is human error that is the root of most cyber attacks, it's also the cure. And there are a lot of good things that you could do with relatively little effort to protect yourselves. I won't read these to you, but because we've already gone over these, but just exercising common sense, using security protocols recommended by your compliance team or by security professionals, and taking into heart why they work and what happens behind the scenes if you choose to play loose with these rules. The main weapon of the attacker in today's cyber world is information and human gullibility. But remember that information cuts both ways, and you can do a lot of good to protect yourselves by staying informed. Attend future presentations on cybersecurity, be it from this organization or from organizations like InfoSec or DEF CON. There are a couple blogs that I recommend, in particular, Preps on Security. And for those of you who have the time, check out Ghost in the Wires from your local library. It tells the story of Kevin Mitnick, who is the most famous hacker in the world. And ask me questions. My email is here if any of you care to get in touch. And I think we have time for one question or two. Here.
What is an easy way outside of LastPass to keep track of all these random email or random passwords?
Memory. I've been doing this for over 2 years, and I like to think I'm pretty good at it. I can't keep track of even a quarter of all my passwords and logins. Yes, checker tree in front.
So I don't know if this is true. I heard that you can actually put a space in a password. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can put spaces, you can put ampersands, really any character you want.
So I haven't tried this. To answer your question, some advice that someone gave me is if you have a password that you use, my name is Dan, by the way. If my password were typically Dan1, okay, let's say my password is checker. I heard that it's very difficult to crack password if you use checker and then a space in another word. So for example, to make it easy to remember, for Amazon, it would be checker space shopping. For Netflix, it would be checker space movies. For Wells Fargo, it would be checker space bank.
That's very possible. Inserting random characters like spaces into a password can do some good to deter attackers. But the key thing is, in the industry, it's known as entropy. It's a fancy way of saying randomness. Attackers kind of are like viruses. The instant you come up with a neat little trick that can be used to make your password a little bit harder to guess, hackers will pick up. And they're actually, you can actually get these lists for free. There are lists of millions of compromised passwords, and hackers will pick up on a lot of people using spaces in their passwords to add additional randomness. So I would say that it's a decent tool, just make sure you don't use it too often.
just curious how LastPass works. Somebody else had mentioned that as well, but like, what's the mechanism for using that? The app, download? Yeah.
The bottom line is that LastPass is a web application and also a mobile application, and it can synchronize across those different platforms. So if you have LastPass for your web browser, you can download the iOS app and it'll work in tandem. If you want to know the actual mechanics of how LastPass works, I don't have nearly enough time, and I know you guys all want to hit the bar. Yes.
Yeah, so do you use like public Wi-Fi at all?
Sparingly, and I never send secure information over it, and if I have to, I use a virtual private network. So that adds at least an additional layer of anonymity on top of my traffic. Yes?
If you're on your cell phone, just through your cell data, is that equally as open as open Wi-Fi? It's like a public hotel signal.
So cellular data transmits over dedicated cellular towers. And in order to communicate with those towers and read your traffic, you have to have your specific hardware and SIM card configuration. Cellular data from what I understand, is a bit more secure than using open Wi-Fi, but it's not invulnerable. There's a device that's used by police known as a dirt box that can actually simulate a cell tower to trick your phone into communicating with it. And those are actually available on eBay. If you have $8,000, you can.
And what are they called?
They're called DRT boxes, or short dirt boxes.
eBay, right?
eBay. Yeah. Tell them I sent you, I get a discount.
But as a former federal law enforcement officer, I can tell you that you need a warrant to use any of that information. So, or even to get the information, to get access to that information.
I'm not recommending you do this, I'm just saying this is not possible.
Ethics.
Yes.
So for email and gone to encrypted end-to-end for that sort of, and like WhatsApp now is encrypted, I think, both
Sure.
ways. You started to move in that direction yourself, or?
Sure. So the question was, am I personally moving towards secure email and messaging? And the term that Jordan used was end-to-end encryption. End-to-end encryption is thought of as kind of the gold standard of keeping your communication secure. I personally do not use end-to-end encryption. And the reason is this, is that end-to-end encryption actually only works if both parties agree to use end-to-end encryption. And this is one of the hard parts about hardening a target against cyber attack, is that a cybersecurity apparatus is only as strong as its weakest link. So I can install all sorts of security software, take every precaution, and send my communications to someone who utterly throws that all to waste. So the short answer is no.
There was no follow-on Hillary Clinton question to that. I was amazed.
No.
It's good for you guys.
No, I deal with a lot of banks, and they all use encrypted email. I mean, they force us to accept, and set up new username, password to accept it. Is that secure? Because our company's looking at going to secure emails.
Is it secure is one of the most loaded questions when it comes to cybersecurity. Everything can be broken. It's just a matter of how long it takes. I think that most enterprise level secure email services are actually quite good. But the key thing is they have to be used properly. Even military grade encryption will not work if you choose a predictable password or if you lose your RSA token. So as long as you're taking care to change your password regularly and not using predictable terms and using multi-factor authentication, you should be pretty safe.
We got time for one more question.
Ken, what'd you say?
Is there any hope for our species?
No. Absolutely not. We're all doomed.
Get straight to that, yeah. All right.
All right, thank you so much for your time.
That's right.